All right, in this video, we're going to review some of the important cells of the immune system and how they function. Now, we've already reviewed and learned about the immune system, so this should be a refresher for most of you, but it's important to go through all of the important things. All right, so important to know for AP biology, growth and dynamic homeostasis of a biological system are influenced by changes in the system's environment. And one of those changes could be a disruption. So disruptions to homeostasis could include infections, pathogens, and so plants and animals have evolved a variety of defenses against infections, including immune responses, which we will talk about and continue to talk about. Okay, so plants, invertebrates, and vertebrates all have multiple non-specific immune responses, so ones that are just general to the organism. So invertebrate immune systems have non-specific response mechanisms and may possess pathogen-specific immune responses, but in general they do all have non-specific ones. Vertebrate immune systems have non-specific immune defense mechanisms, also specific ones, but the non-specific ones include barrier defenses, protective proteins, internal defenses such as like phagocytic cells that undergo phagocytosis, and natural killer cells, and of course an inflammatory response. So all these are part of the non-specific immune defense. Okay, start talking about cells of the immune system. Now, we know that we have an innate immune system and then an adaptive immune system. So we also call this acquired immune system. And there's a lot of different cells involved in this system. Most of them white blood cells are produced within our blood cells, but our adaptive immune response has a specific response to pathogens. And of course, our innate one is less specific. We also want to talk about having a cell-mediated and humoral response. Now, our cell-mediated response involves cells that actually interact with the pathogens. So our cytotoxic T cells, I cannot talk today. The cytotoxic T cells are going to target pathogens specifically, and our humoral response is where we have cells producing antibodies against specific pathogens. So the cells aren't directly involved, but they do produce antibodies that will go into the immune response. So B cells in general are involved in the humoral response, and they're going to produce antibodies against specific pathogens. Now, antigens are recognized by specific antibodies produced by B cells to the antigen. So remember from our immune system video, we did already talk about that. Now, it's important to know that the second exposure to a pathogen is generally going to have a quicker, better secondary immune response. So the first time we'll have our primary immune response, and then sometime later in life, we may have our second exposure. That secondary immune response will be more rapid and will be enhanced. And this is because the body can already recognize that particular pathogen. It already knows what to do for those particular antigens. All right, so of course, again, we have our innate immunity, which is generally more rapid response, and our adaptive immunity, slower response because we have to produce antibodies against specific organisms or pathogens that are going to come in, or the cells have to respond in a specific way. So let's talk about our innate immune system cells first. We have macrophages, which are phagocytic cells. Again, they're going to engulf cells, NK natural killer cells. They're going to present antigens, trigger adaptive immunity sometimes. Monocytes can differentiate into macrophages or dendritic in response to inflammation. Neutrophils include phagocytic cells and release toxins, and they're generally going to respond quickly to at the site of infection. And the basophils are going to release histamines, which are again, going to trigger inflammation, and these are going to include defense against parasites. Some people think that basophils are responsible for our allergic reactions as well. All right. Moving forward. So our adaptive immune system includes a lot of different cells. We're going to focus on the B cells and the helper Ts and the cytotoxic T cells. So B cells, again, are antigen-specific, give us antigen-specific antibody production. So they're going to produce those antibodies that will then go and bind to the antigens of the pathogens or the infected cells. Helper T cells are going to activate cell-mediated immunity and going to stimulate the production of toxins. And cytotoxic T cells are actually going to destroy the target cell. They're going to attack the one we want to kill. Now, helper T cells regulate immunity by enhancing the response of other immune cells. So when we're exposed to an antigen, they can enlarge and secrete cytokines, and so this is a diagram of one of those. And cytokines stimulate helper T cells to clone other immune cells to perform their functions. So that's important for the helper T. Okay, one more thing to know. Cells communicate, not communicated, I spelled that wrong, by cell-to-cell contact in an immune response. So we already talked about cell-to-cell communication way back when we talked about communication between cells, but we have cells like antigen-presenting cells, helper T cells, and killer T cells communicating with each other in order to make sure this immune response is correctly undergone. All right, so again, this is just a diagram of some T cells and some B cells interacting, communicating through cell-to-cell contact in our immune response. Okay, that was quick and dirty, but if you need to review it again, please go back. Also watch our other immune system video, which is linked on your playlist. Thanks, guys.